Hi, it's Debbie, and today I have something a little different to share, a spring wreath. I was browsing around Pinterest the other day, as you do, and fancied making something with felt leaves. And when I entered that term into the search box, the grid was filled with wreaths. I decided on a twiggy wreath with felt leaves in a spring colour scheme and hoped that what I had in mind I'd actually managed to achieve. I think this is the first piece of home decor I've made. I started looking through my dies for leaf shapes I could use. When I started looking, I actually found a surprising number of dies that would work. Here's just a few I pulled out. The Winter Flowers stamp and die set has a nice oval shaped leaf, as does the Hope Bloom set. The One with Nature set has a variety of leaf shapes, including the nice simple oval leaf shape I had in mind. The Forget-Me-Not Flowers dies and Hydrangea Petal dies in case I wanted to add some flowers. Finally, the Outline Clustered Leaves die, which would cut a number of oval-shaped leaves in one pass. I chose the One with Nature leaf die as it was slightly larger than the others and its simple leaf shape would be easy to die cut from felt with minimal wastage. All that was left to do was to start die cutting. So as I start to die cut, I wanted to mention that the photos I took and this video really don't do this wreath justice. You can get an idea of how to make a wreath such as this from the video, but you don't really get to see it at its best on my black craft mat. Also, the photos I took, again, aren't really doing it justice. It shows that it takes practice to take a good photo, and I've got used to taking my card photos, and this wreath on the wall was something new and out of my comfort zone. Anyway, back to the die cutting. I pulled out 5 colours of felt from my stash. I'm afraid I haven't kept a note of where the various felt colours were from. When choosing your felt, I'd look for a thick one with a high wool content, as I find those hold up better and keep their shape well once die cut. I worked my way through the 5 colours of felt, cutting 11 from each colour. I'm not sure why 11, I think perhaps it was 10 and then 1 for good luck. I was half expecting to have to cut some more after I started adding these to the wreath, but actually 55 leaves turned out to be just right. It took me about 15 to 20 minutes to cut the leaves. However, I counted this as my colouring stage to this project, if that makes sense. Generally, when I'm making a card, there's at least 15 minutes of Copic colouring, watercolouring or multi-layered stamping, and die cutting the felt leaves seemed like the equivalent for this project. Once I had my pile of die cut leaves, I turned to the wreath. I think I could have easily made this myself by finding some twigs from the garden and tying them together, but I must admit I popped into the local florist who quickly whipped this up for me and likely made a much better job than I would have done. There's a ring of wire wrapped with natural looking material, and then little bunches of twigs are tied at various points around the ring. The ring is, I guess, the size of a side plate, and then with the twiggy pieces sticking out, the whole wreath is similar in size to a dinner plate. To attach the leaves to the wreath, I heated up a glue gun and then added a small pea-sized amount of hot glue to the widest end of each of the leaves and pinched it around a twig. I didn't add the leaves right at the tip of the twigs, but just below the tip so that the twig supported the felt leaf. I felt if I'd added the leaves right to the tips, they wouldn't have been very stable and would have wafted around a little. I also added a few of the leaves further down the twigs closer to the ring of the wreath so that there was a spray of colour coming out from the centre. I started with 1 colour of felt leaves and added all of those around the wreath, spacing them roughly evenly around the circle before moving on to the next colour. This way I hope to get a good even coverage of leaves and colours around the wreath. It goes without saying that you have to be careful with a hot glue gun. As the name suggests, the glue is hot, but I found that I didn't have a problem as long as I added the hot glue in place and then I left it for just a moment before gently squeezing the leaf into place. I did find, however, I got lots of those spider's web like stringy bits everywhere, and so it was a good job I was doing this on my glass craft mat, which is easy to clean up afterwards. A lot of the wreaths I'd seen on Pinterest had no other embellishment apart from possibly a bow. However, I did see some with tags, and I do love a good tag. As I was aiming for a modern, minimal look to this wreath, I decided on an equally modern tag and pulled out the Oh Happy Day tag from CZ Design and Simon Says Stamp. I love the clean lines and simple font of this tag and cut it from Bazzill Marshmallow card to get a warm white colour similar to the white felt I'd used. I tied a black and white twine bow to the top of the tag and then attached to the wreath with more hot glue. As I mentioned at the beginning, the photos and video for this wreath really don't do it justice. I have it on my study wall just beside my computer and it's bringing me great joy every time I glance over. a reminder of the spring to come, even if outside it's still freezing for now. I'll leave links in the YouTube description below to the products that I've used today, as well as a link to the coordinating blog post over at linedoodledesign.com. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial, I'd be delighted if you subscribe to this channel. Also, if you want to get notified when a new video is out, don't forget to hit the bell button next to the subscribe button too. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.